This recording was done on a beautiful, snowy morning in February in Cincinnati, Ohio in 1972. We were living in a mansion in Alvin Hills, and I came downstairs and Jimmy was there, and we got talking, and I went over to the piano. There was a piano harp, the inside of a piano sitting up against the wall, and so I started plucking the strings on it, and it was cool. It was out of tune and it sounded great. Jimmy went up and got his horn, and we did this duet. It's on here. It's really beautiful, and you had to be there because then Jimmy started reciting some verbiage, it's a beautiful snowy morning in February, and some on and on. Anyway, it's here. I was living in Virginia Beach, Virginia. I was out in the Army for a couple of years. I was living down there playing. And there was this piano player that I went on the road with in a show. And he was pretty out there. I mean, when I met him, he had just dropped 2 tabs of acid and drank a bottle of whiskey. Time goes on. I get a call from him. He says, "Man, I got this jazz gig in Cincinnati. 5 nights a week, $35 a night. And you can stay at my house." So I said, cool. So I packed all my stuff up. I had a big Galaxy 500 for, if you ever saw that car, man, it's like huge. Today's standards would be like a bus. Anyway, I drive out there and I get to his house, and for 3 days I watched him fall from the couch to the bed, from the couch to the bed, from the couch to the bed. So then on one of his falls I grabbed him. I said, "Hey man, I want to go to the gig. I want to see the gig that we're playing. I want to go there." No, don't go to the couch. Come on. Took him in the bathroom, put some water on. I said, "No, just stay up, just get the car, let's go to the gig." So we went to the gig. Unbelievable. The place was there, and there was one problem. There was one thing that was wrong. The place we were going to play at, it had these wooden boards all over the windows and the doors. So there I am. I'm in Cincinnati, Ohio. I got like $35 to my name, and I'm screwed as screwed can be. I don't know anybody, and blah, 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 and so I go up to Mount Adams. That's what I did. I went up to Mount Adams, and the Lovebird Cafe, I think was the name of the place. And I'm sitting there, I'm trying to meet people, find some musicians, something. And it's like, I don't know, 3, 4 in the morning, and all of a sudden this guy comes busting in, loud, boisterous. And it turned out his name was Popeye Moppin. He was a blues singer. So he gets ready to leave. I told him my story. I'm stranded, I'm a drummer, I'm blah, blah, blah. So he says, "Okay, come up and see me tomorrow." I said, "Where?" He goes, "Just come up, you'll see me." So it's like, okay. So the next day, I rolled about 10 joints, and I went up there, and I see this girl on the street. I said, "You know Popeye Moppin?" She goes, "Yeah." I said, "Here, take me to him." So she took me to him. So Popeye tells me about this guy down in Union, this brother named Smythe. Now what happened was, that particular year or the year before, they were separate unions. They were segregated. There was a white union and a black union. Well, they had just merged, whether that year or the year before. And so I told Smythe, I went down, I talked to him, I told him my story, and he said, "Go back and stay by the phone," which I did all day, looking at the phone. And finally he calls me, he says, "There's a saxophone player looking for a drummer in Newport, Kentucky. The drummer's looking to get off the gig." Well, the drummer looking to get off the gig was Grover Mooney. And the saxophone player was Jim McGary. So I go down with my little jive-ass 23-year-old self with a white trench coat and my 2A plastic tip regal sticks and sitting there, and McGary looks at me from the stage and does like this, and I went, uh-huh. So he says that I came up and I played a set, and at the end of the set he turns around and he goes, weird concept, man, but I like it. Gave me the gig. And then I hit it off with Grover right away. Grover looked at my 8-track cassette box and saw Andrew Hill and Coltrane and Miles and on and on and on. He says, okay, you're cool. So I met Grover the first night that I was at the Galaxy Club in Newport. And the gig was over. And I told Grover about my living situation, which was really bad. And he looked in my cassette box, my 8-track cassette box, and saw all these Andrew Hill, like I said, Miles, Train, you name it, it was in there. He says, okay, you're cool, and then we hit it off right away. So I put all his drums in my car. We drove over to where I was staying, picked up my trunk. Goodbye, everybody, thank you very much. And we went to the mansion. Now, we get to the mansion, it's got to be 4:30 in the morning. He sets his drums up, I set my drums up, and we duetted for hours. Hours! I mean, like 2 sets of drums for, and we played till like 10, 11 in the morning. And I was so green that I didn't even realize how good he was. You got that? I didn't know enough about drums to even realize how great this guy really, really was. Grover was one of the best drummers I ever heard in my entire life. He was as good as it gets, I mean, really. And he had a very different type of technique. His technique was not really complicated. It was very simplistic. But within the simplicity of his playing, there was a depth that kept going on and on and on and on, but yet it was very simple. It was sort of like Mal Waldron. And again, you know, like the first time I heard Mal, I was like, wow, what's the big deal? Yeah, right. Then the first gig I did with him, where is he? Where'd he go? I'm lost. Wow. Oh, what? Holy crap. Ah! And I'll tell you about the New York scene. After I did that first gig with Mal, it was right here in New York. Within 3 days, I had a pile of Mal Waldron records that thick. Byron Lancaster, John Betch. Everybody I knew came over with Mal Waldron records. My girlfriend at the time, she was a first-chair symphony player, flutist. And she was going out of her mind because I just wouldn't play nothing but Mal Waldron, day in and day out, day in and day out, day in and day out, until it was inside my body and I didn't have to think about it. And the next gig I did with him was down in Washington with Cameron Brown, and it was a big, big difference between the first gig and the second gig.
So after you left Cincinnati, you ended up
In Boston.
in Boston.
Yeah, well, I had this gig downtown Cincinnati in the black section of town every Monday night. And it seemed like every other week, some drummer was coming in and kicking my ass, man. I mean, like, wow. I didn't even want to get back on the stage. Art Gore was one of them. I can't think of many more names. I remember Art. There was, you know, time. I mean, it was like almost every other weekend, man. The cat was coming in and just blowing me away. And every time I asked him, wow, man, you sound great. Who'd you study with? Alan Dawson. Alan Grover studied with Alan Dawson. I got him one of those, back in those days, you had this, you could drive the car for somebody else to get there. I did that, got to Boston. But first I went up and I applied and auditioned and everything, and then came back and I went up. And I remember when I went in, they had this teacher, Bruce Pasha, who was supposed to be my private teacher. And I walked into Buddha's office and Pasha was there. And I said, excuse me, folks. I said, I'm not trying to be rude. I said, but I didn't come here to study with you. And I said to Fred Buddha, I said, I only came here to study with Alan Dawson, and that's it. I said, now, if I can't study with him, I'll just go get my money back and leave. he goes to me, well, if you talk to Alan and it's good with him, it's good with us. I said, well, I already talked to him and it's good with him, so see you later. And then I got Alan. I just care about the art. That's it. And I care about being happy. And I think Jimmy was the same way. McGary was probably one of the greatest horn players I ever heard in my entire life and will probably ever have heard in my entire life. I think all Jimmy cared about was the instrument in his hand and the music that came out of it.
So tell me some stories about the Galaxy Lounge, Newport, Kentucky.
It was a strip joint. And the good thing about it was you got to play jazz 6 hours a night, 6 days a week. And the sets were an hour and a half, and 2 hours. So you really played a lot. And when you're doing a gig like that with somebody like Jimmy up front, what an education.